my older sister was heavy in the folk scene in Greenwich Village, and she kind of opened the doors for me. And she also turned me on to the Beatles and took me to my first concert, which was at Shea Stadium, and that was the Beatles. And that just kicked my butt and said, "Man, this is what I want to do for a living," and it's funny, I was so passionate about it. I found a broken, beat up acoustic guitar in the garbage. And I took the neck off of it and I got a piece of plywood and I attached the neck with a bunch of screws and saved money and bought strings and saved more money and bought a pickup from a pawn shop. And I had my own guitar. And I started listening to records and trying to learn stuff, but that was not a real guitar, and the action was like 2 inches. It was great exercise, I can say that. But yeah, that goes back to my older sister turning me on to rock and roll, and then from there, I just kept listening to records, and I kept hearing. Well, I think it was Muddy Waters said rock and roll. What is it? Blues gave birth to a baby, and they called it rock and roll. But I kept hearing rock and roll with the same progression, and I wanted to learn the roots of that. And it turns out Muddy was right, and it goes back to all these blues cats doing these progression, and looks like Chuck Berry just souped it up and played it louder and played it faster, and but it was still blues. So I dug into that, and luckily I had young friends that were into music at the same time. And one of my friends told me, "Yeah, you got to check out this album," and it was John Mayall and the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. And it's also called a Beano album because it has Eric Clapton reading a Beano comic strip on the cover, a picture of them. And holy cow, that was the blues personified, but still loud rock and roll Marshall Les Paul blues. And I dove into that, and later on got into Johnny Winter, because again, it was still that crossover of rock and roll and blues, and got heavy into Johnny Winter. And thank goodness he started deviating from rock and roll and got more into blues. I think he had an album, Nothing But the Blues. And he, not too many people realize his roots. I think his first album, or one of his first albums, he had Willie Dixon playing bass on it. And I was like, man, this guy is true blue. So anyway, I dug into his roots, and he later on went on to produce a bunch of Grammy Award winning albums for Muddy Waters, because he found him doing maintenance in some studio, painting walls and stuff, and dug him out and kicked it off. And he recorded the blues as well, in a blues manner, live. He wouldn't have overproduction and tons of overdubbing and everything. He'd go in and hit it, and they'd record it live. And I love that also, So Johnny Winter and Eric Clapton early on, and by cutting my teeth on some of that, it developed into me playing more and more blues, and just keep digging, because there's so many roots.